This is what I thought my 20s would look like. But my 20s didn't really live up to my expectations. I mean, I did go on nights out, I travelled to some amazing places, I shared a flat in London with 2 other girls, and I worked really hard to progress in my career. But somehow, my 20s didn't feel like they were supposed to. I didn't have the time of my life. It's my birthday next week, I'm turning 29, and I know most people would enter their last year of their 20s with dread, and they wouldn't want to leave their 20s behind, but I don't really feel like I enjoyed my 20s that much. I would actually go as far as saying that the first half of my 20s were some of the worst years of my life. And when my 20s didn't live up to the glorified 20s that everybody else seemed to be having, I thought that I was doing something wrong. But as I've spoken to more and more people in their 20s, I've realised how normal it is. So here's what I would go back and tell my 20-year-old self if I could. You get told that your 20s are the time where you should be having the most fun and experimenting. Then you also get told that your 20s are when you should be working your hardest in order to build something for yourself. And that just sounds like a complete contradiction. So I feel like people tend to take one way or the other. They either use their 20s to really let loose and be free, or they take it really seriously and try and climb the career ladder. But no one seems to talk about balance or of keeping things in perspective, and I wish I knew that. I feel like I definitely went down the latter route, so I think I took myself and my life really seriously. I worked ridiculously hard at university, and I spent most of my free time on extracurricular activities and trying to achieve something. I'm sure there's a lot of people who look at me thinking that I did the right thing by being really responsible, but at the same time, I really do wish that I had more fun along the way. Equally, I'm also really glad that I didn't just use my 20s to completely mess around and have fun, because I do think it's really important to take some responsibility of your life, but I just feel like things need to be balanced. Why does it have to be one extreme or the other? We can be really focused on where we're going, whilst also making sure that we enjoy things along the way. I thought that I'd spend my 20s like Friends the TV show, living with a bunch of really cool people, being best friends with them, and hanging out with them all of the time. But after I moved out of the flat that I was living in whilst I was at university, I actually stopped talking to the girls that I was living with. I think in my early 20s, a lot of the people that my friends were just there because of fun and convenience and just needing to have this social group. I don't think they really valued me as a person, and vice versa. And I think deep down I knew that, and because I didn't have this friendship group that were really there for each other, I actually felt really alone, and I felt alone in being alone. But the more people I've spoken to, the more I realise how common it is. As you leave school and university, the convenience goes away and people become busy with their own lives. And so in the end, a lot more people end up feeling lonely and they wake up to the reality of their friendships. But friendships do come and go. School and university aren't the only places where you can meet someone. And eventually people will come in your lives and they'll stay there even through the hard times and become your real friends. I thought that my 20s would follow a really clear trajectory. I'd go to university, meet someone, I'd graduate, get a good job, get married, climb the career ladder and have kids. But this wasn't a good thing. I let society choose my own timeline. When I left school, I went straight into a 5-year degree because I was afraid of falling behind. Once I graduated as a dentist, I jumped straight into full-time work, again because I felt like I had to earn as quickly as possible to buy a house. I felt like I had to live out whilst at university to gain that independence because that's what you're meant to do. I felt like I had to have a boyfriend at a certain age. And I even felt like I had to go partying at university because that's the thing that you're meant to do at that time. I got caught up in jumping through all of the hoops that society tells you to jump through. I've slowed down a lot more now. I no longer feel pressured and rushed to buy a house or have a baby or be at a certain position in my career at a certain age. I think when you slow down and take things at your own pace, you really become more intentional with what you're doing. And it really means that you enjoy the whole timeline rather than waiting to get to the end of it. I thought that my 20s would be this period where I was really confident with how I looked and who I was, but it ended up being a period where I was really insecure. I was afraid of being judged and I would get really quiet with groups of people because I was too afraid to express myself. I just wanted to be liked, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be liked, but I do think it becomes a problem when it comes at the cost of liking yourself. So to give you a brutal example, I cut my hair into a bob when I was 18 years old because this guy that I liked told me that he preferred girls with shorter hair. So I chopped all of my hair off even though I had spent years growing it out. There's just no point being liked if we don't like ourselves, and I know that's really cheesy, but it's true. I wish I'd spent more of my 20s really getting to know myself and trying to be someone that I could be proud of rather than trying to change myself for everyone that I came across. Because the thing is, you can do everything right and people still won't like you. But if you try and please everyone and lose yourself in that process, I feel like that's harder to recover from. When I stayed in long-term relationships instead of experimenting at university, I was worried that I was wasting my youth. Then when my relationships broke down, I'd be crying, absolutely heartbroken, and I'd be worried that I wouldn't meet someone again. You just can't look at anybody else's relationship status to tell you what yours should be like, because everyone is different, everyone meets people at different stages in their life. All you can do is follow your instincts and follow your heart. And very likely along the way there'll be lots of heartbreak, but you'll be grateful in the end for how things have turned out. I thought your 20s were about going along this really clear-cut path, but I spent the first half of my 20s being really sure that I wanted to be a dentist, only to find out in the second half that I was wrong. There's something in psychology called the end of history illusion. It's when we're really good at being able to say how we've changed over the last 10 years, but we're really bad at predicting how we'll change over the next 10 years. We basically think that who we are now is who we'll be in the future, but that is never the case. We are always changing and our values and our needs constantly evolve. So if you spend the first half of your 20s being really sure that you want something, then you realise that you're not happy, it's absolutely okay to reassess and change direction if needed. I thought that I had everything figured out in my 20s. I did really well at school and at university, I got really good grades, and I thought I was a high achiever and that I knew a lot. But then once I left school and university, I realised how untrue that was. At school, you have these exams that you have to pass, but that's relatively easy. Once you go out into the real world, you realise that life has way more uncertainty and you have to adapt a lot. There's no formula for success and there's no textbook where you can learn everything from. But I guess that's what your 20s are there for. It's about constantly learning and unlearning things about yourself and about life. You're never going to have all of the answers. There's a book called The Defining Decade, Why Your 20s Matter and How to Make the Most of Them. The author Meg Jay says that 80% of life's most defining moments take place by the age of 35. Now that sounds like a lot of pressure. But I don't think the defining decade means that it's the best decade of your life. I think it's just a defining decade because it's a period where you can make a lot of choices. That's not to say that you have to make perfect choices. Your 20s aren't meant to be perfect. They're the defining decade because you're going to make imperfect choices, and those imperfect choices will help you to figure out what you want and what you don't want. And through all of the chaos and mistakes, you're going to build resilience, patience, confidence, and a better relationship with yourself and others. You're going to become more of the person that you are. So really, no time is wasted. My 20s were what led me here. My 20s were for not having things figured out. And that's what the freedom and opportunity of your 20s means. It means not having everything worked out.